Hello. Oh, this works. I'm always so excited when I get a mic in my hand. And welcome to what I understand is the first talk of this Beauty Triangle Festival, which is very exciting. We are here to discuss the subject of womankind, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by an amazing panellist. Over to my far left, Ms. Smita Sinha, consultant gynecologist. In the middle, Ms. Noura Nugent, consultant plastic surgeon. And just to my left, Dr. Anjali Matto, consultant dermatologist. Welcome all of you, and welcome you too. So I thought we'd start the panel by discussing what womankind means to us, which is such a huge question. So sorry, Anjali. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, why not? I mean, the question is such an open-ended one, and I think for all of us, our interpretations are going to be slightly different. But I think for me, what it means is the strength and the resilience and the creativity of women. And that could come from all walks of life, that could come from all ages, and that can come from all different spheres of work. That could be art, that could be music, that could be medicine. And I think a lot of it is about essentially how we as women support each other and champion self-belief and self-esteem.
Yeah. And how has it shaped and informed your work, that idea of womankind?
Well, that's interesting, actually. So for me, and certainly a lot of the stuff that I do, it's all skin-related, it's dermatology-related. And probably about 90% of the people that I would see in clinic are female. And there are predictable things that can happen to women and their skin over time. So that could be hormonal changes, that could be life changes, that could be simply just getting older and the predictable things that we would expect to see. So I think really for me, some of that is recognizing the skin will change in a very, very predictable manner. But the second part of that is your skin is an organ, but it's an organ like every other organ of your body. And actually thinking about the skin in context of the whole human is incredibly important. So it really is about how skin can make you feel whole, make you feel complete, but also drive self-esteem and self-confidence. Those are the big things for me. Like, people should look in the mirror and they should be able to look at their skin and feel like they are whole and they are complete in their being by that reflection that they see back.
Because our skin is a real reflection of our soul, almost.
It's the first thing people see.
Yeah. And you, of course, that's why you became interested in dermatology in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about your early experiences?
Yeah, so I feel like I am like one of my patients. I'm now 45, and I developed very, very severe cystic acne from the age of about 11, 12 years old. And I struggled with acne pretty much most of my teenage years. Didn't really have much fun at school as a result of that. You know, people aren't nice to people whose skin doesn't look like theirs. Yeah. And then I got older and my acne persisted. So I am one of those people that's had 9 rounds of a medication called isotretinoin. I have had multiple courses of antibiotics. I've been thrown the pill. I've had every treatment going.
Wow.
And the one thing that just always sticks in my mind is people don't understand how much people with skin conditions are judged.
Yeah.
If you don't look like everybody else, people assume that you're not clean, that you're not looking after yourself. This idea that your skin is a reflection of your health. And sometimes you can do everything right. Your lifestyle can be right, but people still have this judgment that you're not enough. And that's something that always stuck with me. So really for me, it's not just about treating the skin condition, but it's also making sure that you're making people feel better about their skin as well.
Because I guess that must have been one of the defining aspects of your teenagehood and 20. I can remember having bad skin as a teenager, and I can remember like little snapshots of being in a classroom, how awful that made me feel.
It's not wanting to leave the house. Yeah. It's having to wear makeup all the time. It is choosing exercise and sport, which means that you can wear makeup. Like, I don't want to go to hot yoga today because my foundation's going to melt off my face and people are going to see how spotty I am. I'm terrible at swimming. I can't really swim because actually I didn't want to take my makeup off because I didn't want people to see me with my spots. So there are so many decisions that you make every day. There is so much headspace that your skin can take up.
Consumed by, yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that as well as treating the skin and then maintaining the skin in health when you treat that active skin condition.
So that would, I assume, be one of the first things you do with your patients. You assess the sort of impact it's having on their life.
That's right. Nearly everyone that comes in gets asked the same question. And that question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute happiest you could be with your skin, when you woke up this morning, you looked in the mirror, knowing full well that you had an appointment with me today. If I asked you to rate how happy and how satisfied you are, 10 being the happiest, what number would you give me? And that number can be incredibly telling, because if somebody is immediately giving me a 3 or a 4, I already know that that's impacting their day-to-day.
Yeah. And presumably that's why they're coming to see you.
Yeah.
But I guess you see it in the wider world, right? You must be really, really attuned to how people are holding themselves, how they're meeting your gaze and other people's gaze, and how that's associated with their skin.
That's exactly right. And I think things aren't helped by social media.
Right.
I think things aren't helped by the fact that we live such a filtered, curated lifestyle. Yeah. And I think certainly, you know, if one is older, we probably remember a time where actually we didn't have phones, and the only person you would compare yourself to was the other kid in your class, not hundreds of thousands of people online that you don't even know. So I think it's incredibly challenging now, particularly for younger people that are growing up, because they genuinely believe that those pictures that they see is what real skin looks like. And real skin has pores. Real skin has stretch marks. Real skin has cellulite. Like, this is what's supposed to happen to skin, and this is normal, not abnormal.
Do you think filters are having a real negative impact on the way people perceive their skin then?
I think so, and I think the problem is that a lot of people don't realise, or maybe they do, but they still kind of ignore it, that the filters aren't actually, well, first of all, a lot of people use them, and they deny that they're using them. The second thing is, a lot of people have a lot of treatments and they don't own up to them.
Yeah.
So let people believe that they look a certain way when actually it's not their skincare that's making them look that way.
No.
So I think that's the second issue. But what it's certainly creating is a generation of people that are very anxious, but not just anxious, but there is genuinely a lack of core self-belief and self-esteem. And I think that's problematic.
You're seeing that shift, that generational shift. Yeah. That's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It's sad.
I mean, how do we begin to remedy that? Because as you say, there is, I mean, I know it as a fully grown adult and somebody who lived a lot of her life before social media and the internet. We know that there are filters. We know people are filtering stuff. And yet we still, I mean, I can compare myself to images of myself that are filtered.
Yeah.
Like, never mind. And yeah, as I say, fully grown adults. How do we begin to counter that?
It's very tricky. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is, a lot of this actually just comes back to having self-belief and self-awareness and actually recognizing yourself. You know, our worth doesn't come from what we look like. Our worth comes from the people that we are and the way that we behave with other people. And I think there is a certain degree of wanting to cultivate that, which I think is incredibly important. In terms of actions that we can take ourselves, the problem is that once you start looking at lots and lots of skincare, you're going to be shown more skincare. Yeah. You're going to be shown more images of people that look perfect. So I think that's our responsibility then, to actually modulate how much time are we spending on social media? Yeah. Is it possible for us to reprogram those algorithms? So for me as a derm, all of my Explore page, if I don't work on it, is going to be skincare brands and skincare products and injectable treatments. I have reprogrammed my algorithm because I keep liking monkeys and otters and cute animals, that all I get shown now is cute animals.
Did you do that consciously? Did you think I need to do this?
Consciously.
Okay, that's a really good tip.
I've got to keep myself in check as well.
Yeah.
And I'm aware, despite working in this space, that I don't want to start obsessing about every single little thing that I look like. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's on me.
Yeah.
So I have to go away and I have to do the work to make sure that I'm not falling into that trap either.
So start pursuing monkeys on Instagram, Yeah, I can speak strongly for dog videos. I'm sure many of you can. Do you think we have a responsibility to be open about the treatments and tweakments we have, and that celebrities as well, and people who are very influential? Do you feel like we should own it more?
So there's a balance here, isn't there, between an individual's right to not want to have to share their entire medical history and not wanting to, versus actually what is good for society at large. And I think all of us will lie on a spectrum really about how we feel about that. So from a personal point of view, I'm quite open about all the treatments that I've had
Yeah.
done. And I think it's better that people know than don't know. Because unfortunately, if you let a 15-year-old girl believe that actually aging is a bad thing and it's completely normal for a 45-year-old woman to not have any descent of her jawline or loss of elasticity of the neck, I feel like I've kind of failed somewhere.
Yeah.
The flip side, though, is I also recognize the pressure that we put on women. The fact that as women get older, you know, they disappear off TV, they disappear off our radar, because that's the way society has held us. You can also understand why a woman may feel the need and the pressure to do these treatments and not tell anyone. So I think it's a personal decision,
Yeah.
but I think for the greater good of society, my feeling is we should be much more open about what we're having done.
And also allow women to stay on television past 50.
Exactly. That goes without saying.
Do you think, are you seeing things changing? I mean, my personal feeling is they seem to get both better and worse all the time.
Yeah, the problems, I think, become slightly different, don't they? Like,
Yeah.
in some ways, because we've started talking so much about treatments, awareness has become so much more. I guess people know now that these treatments exist. You can go jump straight onto YouTube, see what a facelift looks like, see what an injectable treatment looks like. So more people are having these things done in a way that even 10 years ago, when I started, certainly my private practice and clinic, we didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is a bigger demand for it. Yes, people are talking about it more. But I think there has also been a little bit of a regression in the sense that there is still that issue that we just don't allow women to age.
Do you think age is the big one still?
I do,
Yeah.
I do. I think that we still don't recognise that aging is a privilege
Yeah.
and that we're lucky to be able to get older. That doesn't mean that you can't want to look the best that you possibly can for your age. But at the same time, I think this idea that you see 10-year-olds using skincare that they don't need, vitamin A, vitamin C that they don't need because they're worried about their skin getting older. A 10-year-old should not have to worry about that. A 10-year-old should not feel like their worth is only going to come from having youthful skin.
Yeah. And indeed from their youth, because they're on the clock is
Yeah.
ticking then. Are you concerned about the uptick in very young people using very active skincare?
Yes.
Are you seeing the consequences of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Young girls, I should say, yeah.
The problem here is there has to be a certain degree of brand responsibility
Right.
where you're marketing products to very, very young people. And I think there also has to be then the responsibility one has in the home of, again, teaching that self-esteem where essentially you're not just what you look like. And it's, you know, young boys, they're brought up going, oh, you're so strong. Here's your engineering kit, build something. Little girls, oh, you're pretty as a princess. You know, we've got to change our narrative about what we tell women. Women can be strong. Women can actually do things that men can do, and it just doesn't rely on what they look like. And the problem that we are practically seeing in clinic, and I'm not the only dermatologist that will see this, is using lots and lots of skincare at a very young age can create all sorts of problems with irritation, breaking down the barrier function of the skin, but also the expense, the waste, the psychological impact that it's going to have on that child, thinking that this is what they need to be of worth as they get older.
And you're right, we're developing a fear of aging in incredibly young people. I've got a real thing about we shouldn't congratulate young women on being young, because then we're telling them that's all really their worth and that we are irrelevant. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. What are you most excited about and hopeful for?
I think actually conversations like this.
Yeah.
Because I think that the more we talk about the fact that we shouldn't be afraid of aging, you know, it's okay for women to get older. But equally, it's okay to have treatments if you want to, and okay if you don't. It's about personal choice, but also personal responsibility. And then making sure that if you are in a position where people listen to you, and you can be a role model for others, and you can mentor others, what you're actually trying to instill in them is just that whole... Like, I'm such a fan of this, but it's self-belief. You have to believe in yourself. You're of no use to anybody else unless you can back yourself every time.
And to be fair, having great-looking skin does help that.
One of the many things that can help that. But then how you interact with others.
Absolutely.
How you make people feel.
Absolutely.
Simply just turning up on time for meetings. Things that don't cost you anything,
Yeah.
but can actually demonstrate value and respect, and that you respect others.
Yeah. So it's a lot of very little things all the time, to reinforce your sense of respect and other people's.
Yeah.
Lovely. Nora. Hello.
Hello.
What does womankind mean to you?
So as you said at the beginning, we'll have different interpretations. And while I loved Angeli's, actually for me it's slightly different. I think it's more a sense of identity and I guess empathy, that we understand each other. We know what we have an insight into how women feel and think about things.
Yeah.
And ultimately it's about confidence in yourself as an individual and not looking outside that to gain it from somewhere else.
As a plastic surgeon, how does it influence? I mean, do you predominantly see women? Is that mainly who's coming to you for treatment?
Probably 90, like Angeli, 90% of my patients are female across the board.
And is that just because we worry about the way we look more?
It's a mixture of a few things.
Yeah.
It's partly women are actually more open about having treatments, or more. They're also more under pressure to have treatments, and they are more likely to come for an opinion or to look at having treatments than men are. Men in aesthetic surgery are a growing number, but as a group, and I'm generalising, they tend to be very much more private about it, whereas women tend to discuss it more.
Yeah.
Maybe not publicly, but amongst their small
themselves.
circle.
Yeah.
And women are also put under more pressure for body transformations and facial transformations, let's just say.
Is that something you've observed, like actually getting worse with social media, or getting more pronounced?
I think it's what social media has done is it has normalised having treatments, and it has normalised the ideal face or the very filtered look. So patients who may have, I guess it may not intrinsically change someone's looking for a treatment, but they may come earlier, or they may have a different expectation about it, or they may think some things are possible. And it's also, from a plastic surgeon's perspective, before and afters are very helpful, but they're also misleading. And I sat on the fence about this publicly shown before and afters for a long, long time.
Okay.
Because unless you're exactly the same as the before, the after is not going to look like you, and unless you have exactly the same done. And it is very helpful to see a range of before and afters, I would say.
Right.
But it also, depending how they're presented, presents unrealistic expectations about what can be done or what should be done, because ultimately all of these treatments are to make someone feel better about themselves,
right,
to restore confidence or gain confidence, and actually a lot of the time so they don't think about whatever it is they're coming to see me about, rather than build it up into something more.
Do you try and get them to do that?
Yeah, it's one thing I say quite often in clinic. I say to patients all the time, you come to me because you've thought about this a lot, and you wouldn't be here if it wasn't impacting you for whatever reason. But actually we're doing the surgery so you don't think about it, so it doesn't change how you do something. You're not trying to hide something going swimming, you're not going out with your kids, you're not going to social events because of whatever the concern is. So actually a lot of my surgery is so you don't think about it, and so it doesn't impact on you. And
so
that's
it's about making their lives bigger, actually, and they're broadening their experience.
Yeah, it's meant to be a positive experience, not an experience to put you under more pressure to keep up or maintain.
Yeah, so that's success for you.
Yes.
What was your sort of personal experience, like Angie's, that sort of led you into that work?
So I think for me, it's the visual aspect and the quality of life aspect. Plastic surgery isn't cookie cutter surgery. We have basic principles, and on paper we have steps in a procedure or an assessment, but actually everything has to be individualized, both what you do and the extent of what you do. So it's the sort of bespoke planning, and then it's the impact it makes. What I do is very visual. There are some hidden aspects of plastic surgery, but mostly you're seeing a visual change. Not a change to the extent someone looks like they've had something done, but it is a visual change, and you almost instantaneously see the change in quality of life as patients come back over the early recovery period. And we hear over and over again how positively transformative it can be.
That must make you feel incredible.
Yeah, it's one of the specialties that makes one of the biggest quality of life differences.
Really?
Yes.
And is that just the most amazing thing? I mean, it must be incredible.
Yes,
to open up women's lives like that.
I have very positive clinics because patients come in having had a very significant concern. dealt with, and they do describe it as transformative, and it is a mixture of appearance and function. So not everything's cut and dried that is purely about appearance. You know, for example, I do a lot of breast reduction surgery, and that has a physical aspect as well.
Yeah.
You know, and I treat developmental breast conditions as well. It's all interlinked.
Do you see trends? I mean, are people coming to you asking for specific things?
There are definite trends. I don't get that many coming for very specific out there procedures, and I discourage that, because nothing surgical should be done on a whim or a trend or because something looks cool. But there are definite trends. For example, in breast surgery, it's now for a much more natural look. The Baywatch era is over, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Facial surgery, yes. Facial surgery, it's about recognizing the different layers to be treated. It's about also just looking for a long-lasting natural result. And facelift techniques have evolved from the wind tunnel days as well.
Yeah.
You know, that's the image everyone has in their head. But that's a bad facelift. Good facelifts, you should not know someone's had it done. People are meant to look better, not done.
Yeah, lovely. And Smita, so gynecology is a whole other perspective on womankind, isn't it, I guess? What does womankind mean for you?
So I think leading on from what we've heard already, I think for me it's, in its literal sense, it's a collective of women. And sometimes we may associate the typical characteristics that we may think around those, which is compassion, empathy, nurture, that we may bring into society or communities. But as we've spoken about already, it's so much more than that. There really is the strength, the resilience that I see above anything amongst many of my patients, most of my patients.
Do you think, are our ideas of womanliness on a sort of societal level really entwined with our gynecology, with our sort of physiology, do you think?
I think there's definitely the physical symptoms that women may present to me about, but it is so much more than that. There's all of those intersections, whether that's coming from the emotional aspect of it, the interplay with their confidence, their careers, perhaps, their relationships, finances and things as well. So it really is looking at all levels of a person's life.
What led you into it?
So it was a good question. I'm not sure I've ever come up with the right answer. It was just something that drew me straight away at medical school. It was one of the very few specialities. I think just I trained in obstetrics and gynecology, so sort of being there in all aspects of a woman's health journey. And supporting and being able to advocate for women's choices above anything else, whether that's sort of various reproductive life choices, whether it's birth choices, and going forwards now, of course, we can't go anywhere without hearing about menopause and things, and that is that real intersection between gender and age in our society and what we're trying to improve upon compared to perhaps decades or generations before.
Is that sort of sudden dramatic focus on menopause, do you think that is a good thing or a bad thing?
There's always good and bad, I think, but certainly it can't be a bad thing in total. We need more conversations in many aspects around women's health. We know there's a massive gender health gap. And I think in the UK, actually, we're probably the worst in all the G20 countries as far as that goes. So any conversation is always going to be a good thing. It's like press. Any press is good press. But we have to be careful. We're in a position, along with issues that we've spoken about already, as far as social media goes, that there can be misleading information out there as well. So I think as for women currently in the place that we're standing in today, we do need to be cautious about what we're taking at face value and the places that we may then choose to go to get treatments or to seek help and things as well.
So that's the impact that you're seeing social media have on your area of medicine.
I think, as I said, there are some brilliant practitioners out there who are sharing their platforms and giving very good information, but it's that evidence base that you're wanting to be looking for. And unfortunately, I'm sure, as with many aspects, there's a lot of information out there which is incorrect and misleading. And sometimes because there's this gender health gap, there's sometimes this mistrust with healthcare systems and things. Women may not be going forwards, or they've had bad experiences. They have tried to come forwards with concerns and symptoms in the past. they've been brushed aside with what they're facing. Things have gone unsaid, and in communities and societies, it's been you just get on with it, you just deal with it. And so definitely we're hearing a lot more voices, which we need, and through champion of certain topics and things, menopause being one of them. It's an important time, but I think we do need to be quite careful as well about where we're going to get our information.
So the sudden focus on menopause or any aspect of women's health brings with it an influx of nonsense as well as, What's the most disturbing you've seen?
I think there are lots of safety issues around some of the treatments that you want to be looking at and suitability of treatments as well as misinformation that goes out about who can or can't have treatments and things. So I think sometimes that can be really off-putting for people. There's been obviously a lot of health scares around HRT and things like that in the past through various studies. So again, that lingers in people's minds. They will have seen those opinions perhaps in their families, in their communities.
So there's a sort of inherited fear as
definitely.
well.
And I think when it comes to a lot of women's health, much of it may well be that inherited opinion that you then see around you and may not question going forwards.
Have you seen, because my understanding is there's been quite a sort of anti-pill movement on social media, on TikTok particularly, among younger women, and there's apparently been an increase in abortions because of it. Have you witnessed any of that? I mean, is that...
So currently my practice is more around menopause, so I may not be seeing that side of things. But I think, yes, there's, as I said, with that sort of misinformation, different treatments may not be continued with or maybe brushed aside. And we know that there are certain things that, there's a lot of work that's been done behind. There's a reason they're being suggested and offered and things. So it's definitely all about personal choice, and that's what a good consultation and a good journey should look like with your healthcare practitioner. But it's about making that step, because I think there's a lot of people in the arena who are perhaps putting themselves there as women health practitioners, but maybe don't have the necessary credentials for it.
So we need to be careful about where we're getting our information.
100%,
all of you must feel a huge responsibility to women, and I suppose possibly particularly in the aesthetic field. No, actually in gynecology as well. How do you balance that sort of responsibility with women's desire to just look better? Like, how do you sort of go, you need to feel better, I guess. You need to feel better, not focus so much on... Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
I think so. And I think it is a balance between being in a very privileged position where you can guide these sorts of conversations, but you're absolutely right, the responsibility that goes with that. So I know the way that I tend to handle that is it's that skin satisfaction again. Mm-hmm. Are people having treatments done because... Actually, it's not their self-esteem is completely relying on, if I have this one thing done, my life will be amazingly better and everything will be wonderful. But you can see when you've spoken to them, actually, there's all sorts of other stress going on in their life.
Right.
That one treatment is not going to make them feel better. So I think if I clock that, we actually have a psychologist in-house, and there's a reason why the clinic has that, because we recognize that close relationship between skin, body image, and mental health. So at that stage, I would open up that conversation of, do you think you might benefit from actually having a conversation with somebody?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more going on here than just that one thing that you've told me. So I think that's quite important. And those conversations can be really difficult to have.
I bet.
And you have to have them.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, the difficult conversations are the ones that will give you the best outcome. You've got to work hand in hand with making sure that you're giving somebody something that they want, but they're getting it for the right reason, not because they think it's going to be a plaster that will fix their life forever.
Right.
But it's actually, a bit like I get my hair done and my nails done. I think having a little bit of injectable treatment or having a little bit of laser treatment might make me feel better. And I think it's just trying to tease out the motivation and the why. And then once you've done that, you can, from an experience point of view, figure out that's a good candidate for treatment, that is not. And then if I feel like that is not, either they see a psychologist, and if they refuse to see the psychologist, they're certainly not getting treatments with me.
So you'll send them packing?
Yeah.
So it's almost about them looking at their own issues and fully understanding why they're getting the treatment before they get the treatment.
That's right. That self-reflection part of it and that self-awareness part of it.
It's incredibly important. Is that your experience, Laura?
Motivations are really key to understand, because otherwise you don't really know what patients expect. And I think, so that's the first thing, delving into the motivation behind something. But some of what I do is not small surgery. You know, it can take all day to do, and it can have a significant recovery. So from my perspective too, it's also about being very honest about what's involved and not putting pressure to, you know, it's very rare that someone signs up for an operating date leaving the clinic after the first consult. And in fact, I won't sign them up until I've had a chance to send out information, pricing, all of that. So it's motivation first. It's honesty on my part about what's involved and what it will realistically do. And it's not putting pressure on someone to immediately have something done. I'm not against people. Obviously, this is my area. I'm not against doing it. It's very transformative, positive surgery.
Yeah.
But only if it's done for the right reasons and at the right time.
Yeah, and with the right expectations of a
Yes,
result.
exactly.
I mean,
it's not, you know, I don't do many lunchtime lifts. You know, they are significant surgeries that involve a recovery, and I need to go through risks as well. They are overwhelmingly positive surgeries, but I've got to be honest about what's involved as well.
Angie, what do you Smita, what do you feel like your responsibilities are?
I think, you know, as medical practitioners, it's all about your code of ethics and things as well. It's understanding that underlying motivation for women. But I think, you know, equally, it's that recognition there is a societal pressure, especially with aging and things.
Yeah.
You know, thankfully in the recent Golden Globes, we saw the majority of women over 50s just, you know, looking fantastic and really championing that stage of life out there. So it's natural that that's going to filter down and people are going to want certain treatments. But I think we're also in a great position now where we've got fantastic treatments available. So you know, ranging from whether that's great medical grade skincare alongside skin energy-based treatments to injectables and fillers and things. So you've got a whole range of things that you can discuss. And I certainly see from patients that I will see, it's sort of like as a wraparound service where we're treating perhaps hormonal health and physical aspects like that. And then later on down the line, once they're comfortable with that side of things, you've built up that trust and rapport, they will want those little tweaks and come to you. And it is, you know, as we've discussed and hearing about the confidence that can give is often dramatic. And it doesn't have to be anything, you know, tremendous either. So I think that really, alongside where we're sitting in society now, can be invaluable.
So we're talking about finding a balance, really, between what people think they need and they have to have, and what can be done and what can genuinely make them feel better.
I think it's got to be for them. That shouldn't be a situation where it's coming because there's a pressure and they think that perhaps that's what's needed.
And can you, is that something you can tell? So presumably you're sort of standing out for that. Like, where is this desire coming from?
I think, you know, as I said, there is a responsibility that we have as well to ensure that it's do no harm, ultimately. Right. And that's first principles for all of us, really. So, you know, it is just looking to see what benefits will this treatment offer you versus not.
What have each of you learned from your patients?
I think we have learned that people are very resilient. We've talked about insecurities and we've talked about lack of confidence and self-belief and having the right motivations and so on. But actually, we also learn quite a lot about our patients' lives. We have detailed consultations, and you discover many people are dealing with lots and lots of work, personal, family issues, and still managing to be positive and lead fulfilling lives in spite of dealing with a lot of sometimes volume of things and sometimes actually quite tragic things. So we don't really know our patients' backgrounds when they book in to see us, but we learn a lot, and we learn how people cope and how people are very resilient for the most part.
So womankind is tougher maybe than is often understood.
Yes.
I think also the people that come into clinic now, they're so incredibly educated.
Yeah.
They've done so much research online before they've come in, and they have a very good idea of what is and isn't available out there as well. So I think that's one thing that sometimes I'm surprised that somebody will mention a trend to me, and I'm like, oh, I haven't come across that one. So I have to be honest, my learnings are sometimes a case of, oh, is that what everyone's up to now? Is that the latest trend? Is that the skincare that everyone is chasing? So I find that quite interesting.
What do you think you've learned from your
patients? I think in terms of, you know, what I've learned as a sort of obstetrician and gynecologists have been there at some of the lowest and the scariest times in women's life, as well as the highs. And throughout it all, I think it really is that resilience, that strength. And that leads me to just every consultation, every conversation I have with patients is not only just to listen with that empathy and that understanding, but also just reading between the lines about what's not being said. You can hear a patient's medical history, surgical history. You can, things are getting ticked off left, right, and centre, yet they're sat there with this composure, stability in your own mind.
Wow.
You're thinking, wow.
Yeah, how are you doing
You've
that?
been through all of this, and yet you're carrying on, and you're predominantly there for everyone else. That's a lot of what we'll see as well is perhaps that frustration that whether it's around the career, whether it's around the family role, whether it's being a carer for older family members, parents, and things like that. And it's always just trying to bring out the person in that consultation and say, actually, you're here, this is your time, and it's really okay to be here just for you right now.
I suppose that's the point about each of you. When you connect with your patients, you're at a point where they are having to think about themselves. You're making them think about themselves, which I guess for many of them is not something they necessarily do. I mean, I'm really good at it. I'm like a naturally really good, really selfish person, I think. But I am good at putting myself first. And it amazes me how rarely women do that. So part of your job is to make them do that. And part of your job, they are actually already doing that, which...
But there's a lot of guilt and judgment about guilt in having treatments done, and judgment from others about our fear of judgment in what we do.
Yeah.
So it's countering that as well. And women are allowed to do something for themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's often the shame as well that can go with having a skin condition or a problem with a skin condition.
So you see a lot of shame
to those kind of feelings as well.
Do you think those are particularly, this is very sexist and reductive, but do you think those are particularly female women-kind feelings, shame?
I'd certainly say I'd see it more in my female patients than my male patients, but I think that is also changing for the 16 to 25-year-old males that are coming through that are also now seeing those pressures filtering through because of social media.
Oh, we don't want that.
I think the guilt feeling is stronger in my female patients, but actually the fear of being judged is actually higher in my male patients.
Okay.
Because it's much, although I'm not... I don't think there's anything wrong with male plastic surgery, but men are much more private because they get judged more, actually. So it's vice versa for that aspect in my group of patients.
What are each of you most excited about going forward?
Sorry, go ahead. I think the evolution of blending treatments so that the recognition, say for me, facelifts and skin treatments are complementary. There are some that I don't recommend having together, but I think it's the evolution of complementary approaches.
Okay.
It was coming back to skin influencing things, it influences surgical results too. So I think it's the blending and intertwining and a greater understanding of that and the evolution of natural but long-lasting results.
Smita?
I think we're in an exciting place with growing awareness and that ability for empowering women about their own health, about their own bodies, about their own choices that it's possible to make or think about. And I think just also the interplay between technologies as well, whether it's you're looking at cycle tracking, whether it's looking at how you can influence your potential everyday activities based on that, which is so important. And we're getting more and more awareness of that. Of course,
And
we
you
have to
think
be careful.
that's a good thing?
We have to be careful about the data collection and that side of things,
Okay.
absolutely. But, even if it's just get a diary out and just do it yourself, it's just
Oh.
sort of noting how do I
Paper
feel.
tracking.
Yeah, so I think it's that choice, and it's about staying in control of our own health and moving into that era.
I'll choose something that's not quite so work related, but I think it's conversations like this.
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that we are seeing more female role models and actually showing women they can be more than what they look like. I mean, we've got President of BARP sitting right here, amazing role model. We have somebody speaking later on who is like CEO of a health tech company which does fertility tracking. I mean, these are the kinds of role models we want, right?
Yeah.
These are the people that we want to be looking up to. And I kind of feel that when you go to events like this and you have conversations like this, you can see women that you want to be like. And I find that exciting and I find that inspiring.
Right, I've got one last question for each of you. If there is one thing we could do to improve our experience of being women or of womankind, what would that be? Whether it's turning up on time.
I think mine really is you have to have such a strong sense of self, and I've said self-belief so many times, but I really believe in that. You've got to know who you are, and you've got to know that whatever happens, you can back yourself and you're gonna be fine. And you can't rely on somebody else to give that to you. That confidence has to come from you. And I think that if we could teach people to be like that, life for all of us would be so much easier.
I agree. Nora?
I agree, and it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think you have to have confidence in yourself, and not cross-check yourself for everything. There's absolutely, if you look around at other people doing the same things, you're sort of questioning your ability to do. Actually, most of the time, you have exactly the same ability, if not more, than the people who are already doing it. And it's just not to question ourselves as much, to just have the confidence we can do it.
Brilliant. Smita?
Yeah, absolutely, in terms of confidence and things. But I think it's also being there for us as a collective as well. We're needing to move towards inclusivity across different demographics, across social groups, communities, not forgetting whether it's a racial disparity, whether it's a socioeconomic disparity or an institutional disparity, and also being able to think globally as well, just to champion the support and help needed for women, womankind.
That's wonderful. Thank you all so much. Smita, Nora, Anjali, thank you so much. That's been, and thank you all for coming. That was a brilliant talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.